silk comes from the ground. And a lot of what we eat and a lot of what we do and a lot of what affects us also comes from the ground. And we're trying to make that better.
We connect all the world from New York to Amsterdam to Hong Kong. We have with us Hilmod. So Hilmod is producer of silk, and he will tell us a little bit more about sustainable silk.
Tell us about regenerative agriculture.
We're looking back into the past to a time before the invention of electricity, before the invention of industrial agriculture or the industrialization of that industry, where farmers needed to find a natural way to increase their output and also maintain the land. And we're using all of the greatest hits from history and pairing them with new technology, modern technology, to naturally sort of, I guess, regenerate the land that we're choosing to work with. With the industrialization of agriculture, comes the use of pesticides and comes the use of carbon emitting machines and all of that stuff. We're trying to use the best ways from history to reduce our usage of those things to zero, basically, and help the soil that's been affected by the uses of those things become the way that nature intended us to farm.
What is the big ESG issues that a silk producer has?
It's quantifying the changes so that you can properly govern whether or not it's actually making a difference. I'll give you an example. In our farms, everybody was used to using pesticides, and for them, it was just something normal. When we showed up and we told them, you don't have to use it, don't use it, you don't need it, they're like, no, we need it. No, we need it. This is the way that it's been done. And so we got a little bit of pushback from our farmers when it comes to adopting the regenerative agriculture principles that we're trying to teach them. For example, using organic limestone ash for pest control to stop the bugs from climbing up on the tree trunks, and introducing different animals to eat up the little bugs so that when they go pee and caca, they fertilize the land. I mean, this is just one bioorganic way of pest control that we introduced to them, but they're like, no, but that's going to be a cost, and we don't know, but the animals might eat up at the trees and stuff, but it's just easier if we just use the pest control, we just spray it and it's okay. But then we had to explain to them, why the chemical pesticides are bad for them, why the chemical pesticides are bad for the trees, and for us, why the chemical pesticides are bad for, number one, the leaves, but also because the silkworms eat the leaves. And we were able to find a few people, a few farmers that were willing to try doing what we were doing, especially intercropping, rotational cropping. And so when you don't have the pesticides there, and when you don't have the synthetic fertilizers, it takes time for the land to rebuild itself based on the things that you're doing on that land. And just because you introduce animals doesn't mean you can point them exactly to every single bug. They roam free. They choose to go where they want to go, and they poo and they pee where they want to pee. And so it's sort of, that's the way that happens. That's the way that nature happens.
You didn't manage to educate them yet.
Well, here's the thing. They have their own systems. It's really funny because when I'm there, they know when it's time to go to work, and when they know when it's lunchtime, and they know when it's time to go home, because at certain hours of the day, you can see groups of chicken or groups of geese or ducks just walking in a row, crossing the road to go home, back to their coops, back to their home. And then in the morning, you could see them one by one crossing, going into the farm, and then spreading out and going to eat and do their job. And they know when it's the weekend for some reason. I mean, on the weekend, it's funny because on the weekend, one time I was with a farmer and I saw one chicken leading some other chickens, and I was like, well, that's a very interesting formation. It seems like there's a little bit of chaos behind the lead chicken, and the lead chicken was kind of just walking around not caring. And he was like, yeah, that's the male chicken and his 6 wives.
How much did you manage to move pesticides free?
Right now, we're about 70%. Of the 70%, I can't say that they're 100% pesticide free, because it takes time for those chemicals to wash out of the land. We had to ensure that, number one, our farmers were getting paid and that they could survive on this new way of doing things. And depending on which plot of land, there may be some details that are different within our protocols, but also we had to make sure that the farmers agreed to do it. When we started this project, it actually started for a garment production. Bombyx is under a parent company, PFGHL, and we've been doing garments for over 25 years. 6-7 years ago, where our customers were telling us that our CM was getting a little too expensive, and so we were looking at ways to reduce that, and we found a place inland, and so we found a place in Sichuan called Nanchang, where because we were starting from scratch, we also found that it was a really good opportunity in building this new facility to implement as much sustainability as we could into this new facility, to utilize as much natural sunlight as possible. So big windows to allow the sunlight to flow through. We use these LED dome lights that measure the amount of lux in the facility. So the more sunlight going through the facility, the lower they automatically dim with the sensors on them. Energy efficient AC machines, we use big ass fans. They use an energy efficient motor, but also the sheer size of them pushes more air per rotation than traditional fans, which means you use less energy per air particle moved. And then we also use these machines from Genealogia that started their technology on denim washing. They wanted to limit the amount of water usage in their denim washing, and so they came up with this thing called an e-flow machine, and we're using those same machines for our garment washing. We don't introduce any indigo in our washing, but we have those machines in there to save our water. Well, it affects the water on a molecular level, changing them into these nano bubbles, so effectively mystifying the water, and it all goes into the garment. So the garment comes out a little drier than normal. Our dryers in the actual washing facility, we built this pipe system around them to recycle the heat so that it takes less time for them to warm up. So you pair that together with the e-flow machine, we're only using about a third of the energy that you would normally be using for drying. Plus that facility runs on solar power. At the beginning, obviously there were a lot of stakeholders inside the company that felt that while sustainability was important, it was important only because the customer asked us to do so. If it were about marketing, or if it were because we truly wanted to do it, I think it started out as marketing and it's become us really wanting to do it. But it for sure has to do with customers requesting for it. It has to do with consumers asking for it, because at the end of the day, as a supplier, as a factory, as a raw material supplier, in a way, we are at the mercy of our customers.
How many farmers do you have?
Well, we have over 100 group of farmers. Each group ranges anywhere from like 5 to 20 farmers. There's a lot of farmers involved.
How do you check them they're not cheating along the line?
Oh, of course, we have people that are running around checking the land and taking samples and checking the quality, because we'll find out eventually. Our goal is to convert all of our land into organic. It's not just regenerative that we want to do. Obviously, regenerative is something great. But when it comes to market demand and when it comes to market recognition, organic is still something that consumers recognize. And also, if we're moving on and we're doing this regenerative agriculture, it also satisfies organic standards, because it should be sort of exceeding organic standards.
And the production was impacted by these or not?
Depending on the land. So some of our land, we're using the regenerative agriculture principles to start. And then later on, once we feel it is time, we're going to transition into organic. But then there's other lands that we transitioned into organic right away. And those are the lands where we're seeing that output was for sure impacted when compared to before, when they were using pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. Because once you transition into organic, you have to stop from the first day that you start your transition. It isn't slowly wean yourself off. No, you have to stop, because it takes time for the land to wash it.
If you have to compare the old method with the more sustainable method, how is the economical impact of the sustainability in your product?
For sure, there's going to be an investment there. For sure. But we also have to be smart about our investments. And I think the best example of how we were smart with our investments is the solar panels. When we were first looking at the solar panels, it seemed like it was really heavy investment. And so after, X amount of years of our savings, we basically saved the amount of money that we spent in the beginning to buy and install these solar panels. And that's the way that we have to look at that. At everything, whether it's farming, whether it's the regenerative agriculture principles, whether it's the way that we set up our factory. The longer a garment spends in the factory, the longer you spend doing something, the more energy it's going to take, which means the more money it's going to be amortized into that particular garment. The amount of energy used, it's some indication of the carbon emissions that you're releasing into the atmosphere, but it also is indication of how much money you're spending on overhead. And so they sort of go hand in hand. You save on your energy, which means increased efficiency. Increased efficiency saves energy, which also saves money. right? And so this is the way that we have to see things. When you mentioned the biggest little farm, is another good example of thinking holistically. Is, when in that movie, when they made certain changes, it caused other problems that came with those changes, and then they needed to come up with more solutions to solve those problems. But you get to a certain point where you're thinking, okay, I want to make this change to solve this issue, but will there be other problems that come with this solution? You have to think holistically, and you begin to think more and more holistically about the decisions that you're making, whether that's economically, whether that's environmentally, whether it's socially. I mean, it's as simple as I want to change the ground and the land to organic, and then you go do it, but oh no, your farmers all of a sudden have a lot less income. Now what do? Then they don't want to work with you anymore. So there are a lot of decisions that we have long meetings about, because there are so many effects on so many aspects of the production.
What's the impact, and how much is the savings in terms of greenhouse gases emissions or in water consumption? Is there a big shift for you?
This is all stuff that we've been doing for, only in the past year or two. And I don't think that it's enough data.
It takes a lot of time.
But I would separate the pre-COVID and after COVID. The relationship with the customer pre-COVID was what's the price for most of them, and then tell me what's special about your silk. Quality on silks are really pretty much the same, and the price is very competitive. There are brands that really love the concept of regenerative agriculture. They came, we went together on a trip, 4 days, we saw it, and they were enthusiastic. They gave us the silk business right away. The vertical production means more money to invest at the beginning. I think this is the way to go.
I've seen in your website, Hilmod, actually, that there is live camera that you can see right now how is the situation, and that was pretty impressive. How do you communicate transparency and traceability to your customers?
Oh, it's very simple. I just tell the truth. Just tell the truth of what's happening. You can come see it if you want to. Right now, where we're at in our verticality processes, we're at both ends of the supply chain. So we've got the garment facility that's done, and then we've got the farms. That's, we're obviously working on the farms, and we're building the rest of the steps in the middle over the next few years. We're working on doing the yarn extraction or the filament extraction next year, and we have this whole plan that's laid out on our website. It's about trust between Tommaso, myself, and the buyer and the end consumer. Unfortunately, in our industry, we've sort of built this model where everything is behind velvet curtains. The consumer doesn't know what's happening. They don't know the markups. They don't know anything that's happening behind. They think there's a wizard behind or something like that that's eating a lot of the markups. I don't know. But at the end of the day, when I have meetings with customers, with Tommaso, I mean, we tell them, this is what's happening. This is what the market price is. This is what we expect to happen in the market. And, after a little while, they begin to trust you because what you say actually checks out.
You also are a Blue Sign and you're a member of IG. Yeah, the certification company helping this process.
For sure. I mean, there are certain certifications that the not consumers, but customers will rely on. There's certain verifying bodies that they will then rely on to do their checking for them. Obviously, they have a list of certifications that they might want, whether it's SA 8000, ISO 9001, 14001, all of these numbers and all of these letters that come with the certifications. But, with our Blue Sign certification, we tell them, these are the certifications that we have, and it becomes an education process on what these certifications are, how they deem us, approved in their particular standards. And then the customer will then go look and do their research. And if they trust that, they trust that. Or they might come back and say, we want you to get another certification. And then that's something that we can discuss later on. But, on the customer side, it's about getting these certifications for now, and then coming up with another more creative transparency, communication strategy later on. But as of now, it's about just telling the truth and using certifications.
Tell us the last thought. What do you want to do in the future?
With Bombix, I hope to make silk aspirational. I hope to allow consumers and customers to understand what silk really is, the agriculture behind it, the sustainability behind it, the issues that it carries now. I want the consumer to know that silk comes from the ground. And a lot of what we eat and a lot of what we do and a lot of what affects us also comes from the ground. And we're trying to make that better.
It was an amazing conversation with you. Enlightening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you for the opportunity.
Have a good evening. Have a good morning, and wherever it is.
Yeah.
See you at the
Thank you,
next
thank you.
episode. Follow us, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, stay tuned.